Hello and welcome to another edition of Atomic Mass Transmissions Live. I am John Schaefer and not Will Schick. We did a old switcheroo this time around because some real life stuff got in the way for old Mr. Schick. So I will be painting some Star Wars X-Wing stuff today. We spent the last month of May doing Gathering Forces, so we wanted to spend a little bit of time focusing on some Armada and some X-Wing content coming up. So today I wanted to kind of dive in and try something that I've seen online on a number of ships, and that's that kind of cool stealth effect you see sometimes on TIE Phantoms and sometimes the Sith Infiltrator. So I'm going to try to replicate that using an airbrush and some hand painting. And I see no reason why we can't get started right now. So I'm going to switch over to this other camera and move myself over there and we'll get started. Okay. So this is said Sith Infiltrator. And I think how I'm going to go about this is I want to mask some of the areas off. So it's going to be kind of like a partial, kind of like fading in out of a star field is how it's going to look. So I'm going to use a little bit of poster tack here. This is just kind of stuff that you put posters up on your wall. And oftentimes what we also use to affix miniatures to spray can lids and other sorts of things. It's pliable and it's not so sticky that it's going to peel off paint. To prepare this miniature ahead of time, just to make sure, because I have experienced a little bit of a problem just repainting straight over the bare plastic. I just hit it with a thin coat of matte varnish over top, just to kind of seal all that stuff in and hopefully not get any other sort of kind of weird interactions with the paint and any sort of paint peeling off as I go forward. The other thing that I did is, though these cool little wings move, I think for this effect, I want to keep them static. So I went ahead and I glued the wings in place up on the top on either side. So to get started, I think I want to have, the large front portion of this kind of being a star field, and then I want to have a little bit of this kind of kicking off towards the back here. But this main central area, I want to keep largely free from any sort of airbrushing. So I'm just going to go ahead and protect that with a little bit of this poster tack. But I want to have kind of like a jagged edge to this effect. I don't want it to be like a real straight line. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of like shape this a little bit into like a little bit of a ragged edge, I suppose. And then I will go ahead and affix that at kind of like a jaunty angle here. And press it down on the edges to make sure that I have a good seal here. I'll peel off a little bit of the excess here. We don't need all this. Pull a little bit of that off and then pull it down over here around the side. And then I'll just do each side kind of as I go. So I want to make sure that all of this area is masked off, so all this will be protected. And we'll also want to mask off some of the front edges of these as well. So I'll go ahead and take a little bit of this poster tack and throw it in there. Hello, welcome Jacob James Dynamite from Germany. Huge ships for the Republic. Consular Cruiser. Yeah, it would definitely be very, very cool. I think that we ideally would like to do huge ships for every faction, and I think that right now the Republic is the one faction that doesn't have them, so I think that that's certainly a likely candidate. Down the road, perhaps. Okay, I'll just kind of continue to kind of put a little bit of this stuff on there. And I'll go ahead and use a sculpting tool a little bit to kind of make this a little bit more irregular and kind of push into it a little bit. And I have to be kind of careful here because I did just barely glue that stuff into place because I didn't want to put too much on it. So I have to be kind of ginger with my touch here. But we just want to mask all this stuff off. I'm Reyes. Greetings from Las Vegas. Hello, welcome. We'll get a little bit of that area kind of masked off there. And I think probably, this main central area here is going to be largely covered off. So I'll want to cover up that area as well. And I think we'll just do kind of like a jaunty angle over here. I want it to be a little bit of, kind of an irregular shape for all of this stuff. Oh, everybody's very excited for First Order news. Unfortunately, I can't really share any of that stuff with you all today. That release is still down the road a little bit, and we'll hopefully have news for all of that stuff coming up in July, I believe. Got a little bit, this is the same stuff, it's just blue. Ines, thank you very much. Appreciate the love in the chat. Much obliged. So this doesn't have to be like super exact, but we do want to have kind of like an interesting kind of jagged edge to the whole thing. So I'm just going to use a sculpting tool here, and here and there I'm just going to kind of pull in and away just to kind of create a little bit more of a irregular edge to all this stuff. Just make sure that it's kind of pressed down firmly enough that it can do what it's intended to do, which is to mask off all these areas. We'll mask off some of that. I think I'll pull this in a little bit more too. So we got a little jagged. That's kind of what we want, just kind of like, you know, a regular shape there to it. Then the next step we're going to do is we're going to spray all this area black, and then we'll do a fade of blue all the way up to white up to this very edge, and then we can go in with a brush and we can kind of hand paint in a little bit of a lightning effect, and it should hopefully work out pretty well. Yeah, this is a poster tack, so it's just what you put your posters up with on the wall. It goes by a couple different names, but it's if you go to your grocery store, or you know, most places carry it, kind of like in the school supplies area. And we'll do a little bit more here, and we'll just kind of irregular up this line a bit more too. Just want a little bit of that jaggedness to it. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I like how that looks. And then this whole central area wants to be largely covered. I'm not going to jam this in there too much because it is, you know, there's a lot of texture down in here, and you don't want to get too much stuff down in there because it's kind of hard to pull back out sometimes. So just kind of go a little bit light with it. I'll just mask most of this stuff off with my crazy Play-Doh creation, whatever this thing is looking like. And we'll extend that little bit out there. Kind of connects there pretty well. And again, just kind of make this a little bit more irregular. So you could also use masking tape with this if you wanted, if you preferred to. Or you could use, we've used, in the past, we've used some chipping medium, which is kind of like a frisket, like a liquid mask that you paint on and then can remove afterwards. But I wanted to try this just because I had it available, and this is kind of an experiment for me too. So I've not tried this effect before. I've seen it, and I think I have a good idea on how to recreate it. So yeah, kind of a fun journey for us all. You haven't put a poster up in like 30 years. Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't think I have either. I think most people kind of reach a point in their life where they transition over to framed prints, etc. But that old poster tack still has some uses. Let's make this kind of go a little bit more of a diagonal here. We'll kind of mask some of this area off. Okay, well, I'm going to kick on my spray hood here, so it's hopefully will not create too much noise. So you'll let me know in the chat if you have any sort of audio problems, but hopefully the mic will cancel out the extra noise. Yeah, what do you say? You guys hear me okay? DangerMan64, when repainting X-Wings, do you strip and prime or just prime? I usually just prime for the most part. I think that what I did do in preparation for this is I did, because I wanted to keep a lot of the original paint scheme on it, I just hit it with a clear coat over top, just to spray on top of it to make sure that I didn't have any sort of the wash that was on there, or any sort of mold release or anything else that might interfere with the paint adhering to it. I had a couple problems when I was repainting some Armada ships, and I just wanted to make sure that that did not happen again. Poster tack is impossible to get a hold of in the UK. Really? That's interesting. I'm sure there's some sort of analog. There must be something kind of similar. But, you know, worst case scenario, you could use masking tape or something similar to that to kind of duplicate this. I just like this because I can kind of like shape it into like a real irregular kind of pattern, and I don't have to worry about straight edges at all, which I think kind of helps in general. Okay, so we got that sorted. So the next bit is to apply some black. So I've got an airbrush here. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And kind of as I discussed previously with some airbrush tips, I usually like to put in the thinner first. So I'm just using an airbrush thinner, like flow improver. It's going to thin down the paint enough to make sure that it's going to flow through there nice. So I go ahead and put that in the cup there first, put in about that much. And then I'm just going to go with a... I'm going to go with this color, Deep Blue. We're going to try that first, and then we're going to fade that down, because I know that I'm going to kind of fade into like a blue, kind of cyan-colored effect. So I'm going to go ahead and try this color, because it's a nice, deep, dark blue. So I'm going to put some of that in the side of the cup there, and then use my brush to go ahead and mix it all up. Hallowed 007, we won't be announcing all that stuff probably for about another month or so. That leak was very, very early, so I know you all are very excited for new news about the First Order, but right now we're focusing on the Trident that's coming out at the end of this month. So that'll be out on the 25th of June. All right, this is looking a little spattery here, so I think I'm going to add a little bit more thinner to it. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the issue that we had with COVID and our supply chain means that some of our releases are not very coordinated right now, and certain places in the world are getting things earlier. But as far as our intended announcement for that, that's all going to be coming up in July, I believe. So with airbrushing, you always want to make sure to kind of move. Keep motion going at all times. You don't really want to sit and let the paint cool too much, so I'm trying to kind of move around this as well as I can. And I think that I want to protect a little bit more of the back of this now that I look at it, so I am going to add just a little bit more poster tack to the back. Yeah, both of those releases that are coming up are super cool, and I know that's a bit of a tease to tell you all that, but it's I think you'll be excited about them. They're definitely going to be very, very cool. And we'll just kind of make this a little bit more regular as well. So speaking of the Trident, I am awaiting to get my personal copy in here pretty soon, and then once I do get it in, it is my intention to get it out on the table. I know a lot of people have been really missing some of the preview articles and things that we used to do at FFG, but we currently don't have a website for all of our Star Wars games set up. We're working on it, but in the interim, we're using social media to show off a bunch of stuff, but it's hard to get across a lot of the game mechanics and things. So hopefully we can kind of give some people some insight into the Trident and how it plays, a lot of the cool stuff that's in it on an upcoming live stream, which I'm looking forward to doing. I'm gonna bring my own squad and try to battle it in the AI-based scenario that comes with the Trident. Should be a lot of fun. But as soon as I get my copy of it in there, we'll have that stream up and running. I'll go ahead and paint in this blue back here on the back side. Down in here as well. There's probably going to be a bit of touch-up here and there, where I go back in and make some adjustments to all this, but I'm mostly just doing this to the top side, and then I'll flip it over and do the bottom side as well. But I think for the sake of today's tutorial, I think I'm going to focus mostly on this upper side of it. just kind of continue around here. Then we're going to fade this down from this blue into black at the very edges. I want to make sure to get this other side over here as well. And I do find with, when repainting X-Wing ships, it really does help to have like an extra kind of junky base that you can use, which I use this specifically for repaints. And I'm going to try to dodge all the stuff on the bottom here as much as I can. We'll tidy all that stuff up later. Okay, I'm just going to blow with just straight air here to hopefully kind of dry this a little bit faster. So those that don't know, an airbrush typically has like kind of a dual action. So pushing straight down just releases air, and as you pull the trigger back, it starts to introduce paint. So I'm just going to use straight air here to kind of dry this out a little bit faster. You don't really want to airbrush layers on top of one another while the paint is still wet. Usually doesn't end well. We might require a couple different coats here. Yeah, we're doing a kind of a cloaking type effect for the Sith Infiltrator. It's like one of my favorite ships. I love it. I love Darth Maul. Super cool. So I thought this would be kind of a fun thing to do. And I'm sure that people are excited to see some X-Wing content after we have focused so heavily on Legion over the month of May, which was a blast. We're going to be getting some gameplay in with those new forces over the course of this month. So make sure to check back on our streams if you want to see some Legion gameplay and see us play some games with our freshly painted forces. Should be a good time. Yeah, I really do like this ship quite a bit. It is really cool. And I'm kind of getting prepared for, the Trident when it comes out, so I'm building up a bit of a Separatist fleet. Little squadron for all that stuff. And I think this is certainly going to be in there. Maybe Dooku will be on board, who knows. Okay, so I've got that initial color down. I'm going to go ahead and spray out the remainder of this color here. Yeah, you don't want to use your airbrush to dry your hair. It's not gonna work out very well. It seems like there's some distinct lack of efficiency there. But you can do the opposite. You can use a hairdryer to dry your minis. Okay, next, a little bit more thinner in the cup. I'm going to go straight black this time, flat black. Whoops. And you could certainly replicate this kind of effect by hand, but as I only have an hour to do it, this is, in my opinion, the faster and more efficient way to do it. And plus, I think that the effect is really, it really leans in on like a good fade and a nice transition in between the colors. And you can just achieve that so much easier with an airbrush than by hand painting. But same basic principle. And then all this needs to, we want to concentrate this more towards the back. So we want to still have a little bit of fade going in. But it's going to be a lot closer up to the very front. And then I'm going to see if I can actually do a bit of a spatter paint effect by reducing the pressure on my airbrush really low and spattering in some stars. We'll see how that works. It's all just like a little bit of an experimentation here today. Cool, so you're starting to get a little bit of that fade from the, you can see it maybe the camera will pick it up, but it's black up to that point and then it's about blue out there as it leads up into the area where we're going to have more of a kind of a lightning effect. And I think it's generally good practice to always kind of angle this thing and spray it so the overspray won't really hit other areas. So you want to kind of angle this thing so that the spray is shooting straight across that way whenever possible. Just general good practice. Overspray on an airbrush is a real thing, especially if you get up really close to the miniature, because then it just hits the surface and then reflects in kind of unpredictable ways. And I'm going to head, because I know this is going to be black on the very tip, I'm going to hit the bottom of this with a little bit of black. And then we'll go back in and touch all this stuff up a little bit later. And we got this one last one back over here. Yeah, we're definitely going to reprint every product that we, we currently have in our catalog that we released as second edition ships. It just takes a little bit of time for it all to get sorted. So as soon as we get some word about that, we'll try to let y'all know. I know people have been very patiently awaiting some reprints of some of those older X-Wing ships, like the HMP and the LAT, the Tri-Fighter. And unfortunately, like, a lot of the control over that is kind of out of our hands, but if we get info, we'll certainly let everybody know. Keep y'all posted. I myself am excited to get some HMPs, as I did not order some when they initially came out. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and spray out the rest of the black here, and then we can start to transition to doing the kind of lightning effect along the edge there. Right now it does not look very pretty, but hopefully it will look really cool once I pull all this poster tack off. Bear with me, it's taking a little sec for my airbrush to clear all the paint out of it. Yeah, kind of the same story. We're trying to get everything reprinted as fast as possible. Asmodee is largely in charge of all of our reprint schedules and the distribution of everything, so we're kind of waiting on word from them. I know there's a lot of stuff in the works. We're trying to get everything reprinted, but there's a lot of products in our catalog and only so much production bandwidth to get them all done. But we are certainly committed to getting all that stuff reprinted for everybody very soon. Clean out this airbrush cup here, a little bit of thinner. What I'm doing right now is I kind of pinch the tip here a little bit, and that lets it kind of backflush back in there. It makes a terrible squealing noise, but it helps kind of clear some of the debris and stuff that's back in the airbrush on the internal part. Indeed, pardon me. Okay, all right, finally the cup is clean. Thanks, PT Militara. We appreciate it. We're just trying to get all of our products back out into the marketplace, trying to get back into a comfortable place where we were before all of the craziness of the pandemic. So, but things are starting to open up. Things are starting to fall back into the regular groove. So we are optimistic about getting everybody the products that they are so eager to get a hold of. So the next layer I'm going to do here is going to be Cantbaric Blue. Nice kind of deep blue color. And then I'll just go all the way up until like this light sea blue from Vallejo, and then a little bit of white at the very end. So a couple layers to it. Just gonna mix this color up in here, make sure it gets nice and evenly distributed. Test my spray. Cool. Okay, so for this, I pretty much want to kind of angle it because I don't want it to interfere very much with the black. I want to almost kind of like shoot at that edge. So I'm actually going to start over here and then just kind of bring it in and just kind of chase along that edge as tightly as I can. And I'll have to get even more precise as I kind of add more and more layers, because the closer it gets to the poster tack, the more I want it to be white. So it's to get the gradations in there right, you're going to need a couple different layers, I think. Kind of angle this so you can see it a little bit better. This airbrush, let me take a look at my regulator right now. Okay, so the airbrush compressor that I have has a variable output pressure on it, and I do recommend that for anybody that's looking to get into airbrushing. I think it really helps for control. But it's currently set at about 45 psi. But I also have this little doodad here, which I'm going to probably use here in a second, which is another little valve that it's all the way open right now, but as I turn and tighten this little bit right here, it restricts more and more airflow. So my theory is if I choke it way down and get the pressure very low, it'll get very spattery, which will help me with my stars when I go to apply some stars. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We're kind of learning together on this one, so it's I like to experiment and do some new stuff. Okay, so we're starting to get that blue fade in on all these areas. Hopefully the camera can kind of pick that up a little bit, kind of see that kind of coming into being there. It's subtle right now, but it'll be more pronounced as we add more and more to it. So I think I'm just going to take this existing color that I have rather than flush the entire cup, and I'm just going to add in some of this bright blue to it to kind of get the next highlight. We'll probably have to add just a little bit of thinner to it too. Yeah, that little valve is pretty handy. I've used it for a number of different things. It's really useful if you're trying to do like really tight in detail work, because you want to dial the pressure way down the closer you get to the miniature, because as that air hits, it's going to disperse and just like, you know, shoot out from the sides, and it'll start to get a lot of overspray. So if you can dial down the pressure, you're gonna have to thin down the paint quite a bit as well, but as you dial down the pressure, you can get closer to the miniature without having any sort of issues with it. Go in here with a little bit of this brighter blue, and again, I'm kind of just shooting right at the blue tack itself, or the poster tack, just because I want kind of the overspray, and I want it to be really tight up against that. I don't want to paint over the darker blue that I've already put down. I want there to be a nice gradation in the color. Cool, it's looking pretty good. Okay, you're starting to see kind of the general effect here. And let's go a little bit higher on it. Yeah, the toothbrush could also work for the spatters. If this plan on the airbrush doesn't work out, I'm probably going to go that route. I got some old junky toothbrushes and stuff I can use. Okay, so I'm going to go straight with this color here. It's kind of brighter blue. Light sea blue is what it's called. But you know, any bright blue will do. Don't get too caught up in the exact paints I'm using here. I think it's there's a lot of different brands and a lot of different options you can go with. Okay. All right. Again, kind of uptight against it. And I'm almost just spraying onto the blue tack more than anything, and just having a little bit of it bleed over. And you'll notice I'm pretty close to it, you know, so it's, I'm not going full bore on the airbrush, I'm only kind of going back a little bit. And just trying to be real gradual with it. Oh, I think maybe one more layer, and we'll just go in here with a little bit of white over top all this. Cool, that's looking pretty good. I think that my fade right there is not exactly as smooth as I'd like it to be, so I'm going to go back in with a little bit of that darker blue and kind of smooth out that transition a little bit better. The transition is really going to kind of sell the overall effect, so kind of an important bit. Okay, so I'm going to go back in with, let's go Canterbury blue. It's kind of darker color here. Also, another thing that we just announced, the June painting challenge for Star Wars Legion is up and posted. It's for heavy units this month. So we'll be tabulating all of the submissions that we received over the month of May for core units. And then we'll focus a lot on showing off cool tanks. So I think that's you know, timely with the release of the LAT and the AA5, some of these other products that just came out recently. So hopefully you can show us all your paint and chops with those. And then we also have in the works, we're going to hopefully launch a similar type thing for repaints for X-Wing and for Armada in the month of July. Certainly want to show off a lot of these cool repaints that we're seeing online. Yeah, that fade's looking a little bit better to me now. All right, so let's punch it up with a little bit more white. Yeah, I've definitely seen some really cool LAT paints as well, or Gavinport. A lot of people doing cool stuff with LEDs, interior lighting and stuff. I still have mine kind of like in parts from when I streamed it before, so I haven't sealed it up yet. So I could probably still go in there and add some LED lights. That sounds kind of like a fun little project, something to try out. I usually don't mess around with the LEDs that much, but it seems like a good application for it. And there's probably going to be just enough space on that miniature to pull it off. Put in the batteries and other things like that. Okay, last little bit, we're not going to go straight white. We're going to add a little bit of this blue and then mostly white. So it'll be maybe 2 parts white to 1 part blue kind of situation here. Okay. Mix those together. Oops. Clean off my brush, get the darker blue paint off of there. Mix up this concoction in here. Yeah, and it's very, very bright. But we want to reserve the white for the little kind of lightning effects that we're actually going to hand paint in there. I think I need to add a little bit more white to this. Yeah, that is very true. I think that, you know, sometimes the white can be very chalky with airbrush paints. I think if you use it sparingly and kind of mix it in there with other colors, it can work out pretty well. I know Dallas is a big fan of, you know, using off-whites and tans and things. Just usually produces a little bit less of that chalky effect. All right. Just trying to get all those lights in there. It's a little tricky because I chose like a blue poster tack that's very similar to the same color, so maybe next time I'll choose a different color of poster tack. Or a different color for this effect. I was thinking about doing like a red, which would be kind of cool, but I think this kind of classic lightning-y kind of blue color usually looks pretty sweet. So, all right, so there it is. We've got our general fades on there. Now let's do a little bit of experimentation. Let's get a little jazzy with it. We're gonna try this star spatter effect. And for it, I'm not gonna thin down the paint very much. I'm gonna pretty much leave it straight as is. I'm gonna turn the pressure way, way down, and we'll see how that works. If it doesn't, then we're just gonna do the old tried and true toothbrush spatter paint effect. But just for the sake of experimentation, let's give it a shot. Yeah, regular old titanium white from an art store. I certainly have used that before. I like the scale color white quite a bit. I think that's pretty good. The white and the black for that range is pretty solid. But yeah, there's a lot of different options. You kind of have to experiment with it. And sometimes, you know, the endorsements you get from one person doesn't really match your painting style and doesn't work out quite so well. So, but in general, yeah, those are definitely good recommendations. All right, so for this, I just put in just some straight white into the cup, and I'm gonna dial this thing way, way back. Let's see what happens. First, I gotta kind of spray out the excess here. Ooh, that paint might be a little bit too thick. Let's try to thin it down just a scotch. Yeah, that's a very good point there, Dallas. I think that is totally true. And I think that's, you know, in general, that's just something that we try not to, we don't really try to push too much, like a lot of specifics. We want to just kind of inspire people to experiment and try their own stuff. All right, so let's dial this back even more. See if we can get it to spatter. It's still flowing there pretty well. Ooh, that's kind of what I want. Yeah, let's try that. Yes. So for this, I'm pulling way back on the airbrush. I'm getting pretty far from it, and then I'm just trying to like hitting it, you know, kind of forcing some of the paint into the cup, I guess, to kind of get that spatter. And it seems to be working out all right. I gotta be kind of careful with it though, because it is a little unpredictable, right? Yeah, that looks pretty cool. I can always go back in and brighten up some of these stars a little bit too. a little bit back here on this one. Yeah, that's working out okay. So yeah, again, you could also achieve the same sort of effect with the toothbrush and some spattering stuff, but I don't know, sometimes I just get like really big chunks in the spatters, and this seems to be about like the right scale that I'm looking for. It seems to be working out okay. I think that's probably enough. I don't want to overdo it as he sprays more on there. Okay, that looks good to me. Cool. So you can kind of see the spattery stars that we have there. Little bits here and there, kind of over and across. I'm going to let that dry just for a second because I don't want to mar the paint while I am removing stuff. So during that time, you can listen to me clean my airbrush for a second. It's going to be glorious. I can answer some questions in the chat if you all have some. Yeah, I've been there. I've definitely spilt a whole pot of paint, especially when I'm not paying attention. And these open cups like this, sometimes you're just like, and just like spraying all crazy style as you do it, and you're just dumping paint on yourself. And it's I think over time, the more practice you get with it, you'll learn to kind of keep it level and adjust your hand to make adjustments. But it's yeah, something to get used to. Yeah, wear some junky clothes when you airbrush. Okay, gonna spray that out a little bit, and then I'm just gonna use straight air here once I get my airbrush cleaned out to hopefully speed up the drying process a little bit here, because I don't really want to put my finger in wet paint, and it's gonna take a little bit of time. That's always the drying phase of any project, right? It's always a thing you have to contend with. Hopefully just be able to dry this out. And I think I'll probably go back in by hand. There's a couple areas back here where I think just like a few little punches of brighter white, but I can certainly pick that out by hand. I didn't want to just get it too spattery overall, but I think this is a good foundation for the stars, and I'm glad the trick worked. All right, I can't wait anymore. I got to pull some of this stuff off to see how this is going to turn out. So let's start at the bottom here. Ooh, it's like Christmas. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yeah, I'm liking it. Yeah, the best part indeed. Oops, there goes the ship off the base. I'll probably need to clean this up a little bit by hand. Just remove some of this excess stuff. Oh man, a messy affair. But it's coming off okay. Got a little bit up here on the top that I'm gonna have to tidy up. Yeah, I think that white blue tack, not blue tack, but poster tack seemed to work a little bit better than the blue stuff. All right, get all this off of here. Yeah, it's turned out cool. There we go. Yes. Yeah, I will use that white stuff a little bit next time. This blue stuff seems to be a little bit too sticky. But still coming off okay. Right. Let's clean up some of these little bits here. Should be able to just kind of rub these off. There you go. You can start to see what I got going on here. So kind of see like this kind of cool angle. I think this line could have been a little bit more jagged, but hopefully we can kind of tidy that up with a little bit of the lightning stuff. Yeah, CP Games painting. Will and I switch places this week, but every Wednesday and every Friday we do Star Wars stuff, and every Tuesday and Thursday we do the Marvel Crisis Protocol. So this is in fact a Star Wars day. All right. Cool. So I think I just got a little bit of, you know, rather than you all watch me pick poster tack off of this miniature, I think I'm going to soldier on and get some brush painting done. But you can kind of see the overall effect that we have going on here. A little bit of tidying up here and there, but worked out well. Don't use that blue poster tack, I guess. That's fine. It's just a little bit sticky. But cool. That's that effect has turned out pretty well. But I think what we really need is like a kind of a white, kind of lightning kind of line that goes around it to kind of make the border and the transition a little bit smoother and cooler looking. So let's go ahead and start doing that. So I'm going to bust out the regular brushes. Turn off my spray hood there. Let's get cracking. So I think the first step I'm going to do here is, how much time have I got here? About 10 minutes. That seems about enough time. Kind of illustrate the general effect. So I'm going to use not straight white, but I'm going to add a little bit of that light sea blue to it. I'm going to kind of thin it down a little bit. I can kind of show you my palette here if this helps. I'm going to thin that down. Something akin to that. Cool. Take off the excess off of my brush. Then let's start to kind of chase these in with kind of like in a regular little line here. And this is pretty thin paint because we want to make, we want a little bit of transparency to work here for us. Oops, you can't really see that. Let's get that on camera. And I'm just going to kind of, you know, follow it kind of irregularly. And it's kind of a thicker line, but that's okay. Oops, I got a little bit of schmutz there. And we'll trace in over top of this to kind of make a cool kind of a lightning effect here. Start on that side, and we'll go over to here. Lightning is typically in like the glow for that, which is kind of what we're emulating here. It's not actual lightning, I guess, on the surface, but I'm just kind of like stippling in a little bit and just kind of making that kind of a regular line to make this kind of like jaggedy kind of a mark here across. And I'm doing that by just kind of like tapping and just moving my hand up and down a little bit as I kind of move around, just to make it a little bit more jaunty, a little bit more irregular, I guess. This side. And if you wanted to, you could certainly kind of trace in some little licks of lightning in and throughout. But it's I usually find that, like, you know, when you have those little I guess arcs of lightning kind of coming out, it really helps if you have that kind of glow effect around it. And if you didn't prepare that with the airbrush, it's going to look a little out of place. So I would try to kind of keep this positioned, you know, inside of like the little fade section, and have it kind of, you know, go right along this line as you go through this line of division here. But it can, you know, it can be a little regular. You can kind of add a couple little dots, a little bit of randomness to it. I think I'll do the same up here. I want it to really be bright up along that ledge. So what other ships do you think that this technique would look really cool on? The TIE Phantom's an obvious choice. Any others that you in the chat think that would look particularly cool on? This one just has like really large flat panels. And I just love this ship, so it's it was an easy choice for me. Okay, and then over here, got this one got a little wonky over on this side. This might require a little bit of brush touch up here, but we'll try to touch it up as well as we can. It looks like this kind of went up here a little bit on the top, so we'll just trace around this a little bit. This part might require a little bit of touch up, as I don't have that fade in here really well, so it doesn't really sell the effect quite as well. So I think that was just a little bit of sloppy masking on my part. That's something I can certainly touch up. No biggie. All right, so we've got that kind of lighter kind of blue color in there. Let's go ahead and trace around that a little bit with a lighter white. Okay, I'm going to smooth this out just a little bit of water. I'm going to blur this edge a little bit just to get that fade in there just a little bit better. And this is where you know, a technique like that kind of two brush blending, where you're applying the basic color and then you're going back in with a second brush and kind of feathering the edge, that could be pretty handy right now. Oh, a little bit more over here. Forgot this line. Okay, well, let's get this last line in here and try to finish off the effect as well as we can. But hopefully this was a useful stream for those of you looking to kind of emulate this kind of effect. I think there's certainly other ways you can go about it, but I thought that this was a pretty straightforward way, provided that you have an airbrush. Cool. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit of finer tip brush because I want this to be nice and fine. So I'm going to go to like a size 1 here. Just go straight white. Let's get a little lightning action going on. And this, again, I'm just kind of being real irregular with it. I'm just kind of trying to be kind of random and make it look a little jagged and weird, but still provide a nice enough line to divide these two sections of the ships, or the ship hull, I mean. Up on this top. See a little area there where I don't like how uniform and thick that line is right there, so I'm going to try to blur that out a little bit. My second brush going. And I can always go back in with a little bit of the regular blue that I used beforehand and kind of smooth this stuff out. All right, a little bit white here. We are drawing to a close on today's stream. I'm pretty happy with where I got, though. I think that this was a fun exercise. And hopefully inspires you all to give it a shot. Yeah, just trying to be like nice and kind of tidy with it, I think. You know, then I'll obviously need to flip this thing over and do the bottom side as well. But you won't see the bottom as much, so I don't need to be quite as particular with it. This is fun. Always like trying new stuff. It's always entertaining to try to give something a shot like that. Cool. Well, I think that is largely the effect that I was going for. So I think right now I'm just going to punch up a couple little of these little stars just with little tiny dots. Make them kind of pop a little bit more. Try to spread them out kind of irregularly. That one I don't like. You didn't make the cut. We'll punch up a couple more of them here. That one's a little too big. That's the beauty of having a wet brush next to you, because you can always just go back in here and you can just fade all that stuff out. Should it not work out for you? Grab my brush. Okay, well, I think that is good enough for today. I'll certainly add a little bit more detail to this and kind of tidy up some of the areas here. I can kind of see some spots in here where it gets a little bit off, and the transition up here on the very top part, I think I can smooth that out a little bit more too. But in general, that is how I'd approach a kind of general cloaking effect that you would have on a Sith Infiltrator or similar miniature. Hopefully you all found that to be a useful technique. We will be back tomorrow. Dallas Kemp is going to be painting some Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff, and then on Friday, Will Schick's going to be back and painting some X-Wing ships. I think he's also going to be doing some repaints. So until then, thank you all for joining us so much. That was the sound of my air compressor arcing at me. Yeah, appreciate it, everybody. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time.